I was driving a long stretch of highway about 40 miles at around 3:30 to 4 a.m. The night was ink black. Street lamps flickered in the distance, and every few minutes another car would pass, its headlights slicing through the fog. Along that road, every couple of hundred yards, there were little roadside memorials, crosses, bouquets, candles, and packets of offerings left by people who'd lost someone there. The dim candlelight and the cold mist made everything feel hollow and uncanny. Up ahead, I saw a figure standing at the shoulder, pointing right at me. At first, I thought it was someone trying to flag me down. The silhouette was backlit, and something about the color looked like yellow. Then it stepped into the road. It wasn't a person in jeans. It was a state trooper in a reflective vest, his patrol SUV parked behind him, with the red and blue bar casting quick flashes across the asphalt. He waved me over and asked me to pull to the side. "Can I see your license and registration?" he called as I killed the engine. "You got anyone in the car with you?" "Seatbelt on the back?" I blinked. "No, just me." "I'm alone." He looked puzzled. "Ma'am, someone back there doesn't have a seatbelt on." "Are you sure you're alone?" I laughed nervously and said, "Yeah, I'm alone." We both got quiet and looked around. The shoulder and the fog were empty except for the memorial crosses and the glint of my taillights. The trooper shone a flashlight toward my rear window and froze. "You see that?" he whispered. At first I saw nothing, then reflected faintly in the glass, a shape, a small hunched figure sitting in the back seat. It wore a dark burgundy dress and its long hair hung over its face. The silhouette looked wrong, limbs bent at odd angles, as if every bone had been broken and stitched back together. The hairs on my neck stood up. The trooper's jaw went tight. That's not a human being," he said. His flashlight trembled. "When I pulled you over, I thought you were carrying a hitchhiker." I walked around, no one there, but I saw her in your rear view. She's been reported on this stretch before. Before I could react, he opened the rear door and somehow clambered into the back seat. I swear I didn't notice him get in. One moment he was standing in the fog. The next he was behind me, crouched in the small space, face inches from mine. "My God," he breathed. "She looks like she's from a bad wreck, dressed in red, walking like someone whose joints don't work right. She can't be out in the world like this." My hands shook on the steering wheel. Why, why are you in my car?" He didn't answer except to grip the passenger handle and push himself forward toward the dashboard. "Get me to the next turnout," he said flatly. I started driving again, my heart kicking against my ribs. Everything felt heavier, like I was carrying something I couldn't see. The car felt sluggish, as if an extra weight had settled on the cushion behind me. I glanced in the rear view. The shape was there, small, hunched, hair draped over its face. "Here," the trooper said quietly as we reached a narrow turnout. "Let me out up here." I rolled to a stop and looked back. There was no house, no streetlight, only the fog and the memorials. The trooper opened the door and pushed himself out into the mist. I watched, ready to call out, and then he was gone. No footprints in the gravel, no sound of boots, nothing except the small, high sound of a distant crow and the hollow whistle of wind through the crosses. After that, the fear that had been building inside me exploded. I realized what I'd been told in older stories. Drive that road at night long enough, and you might meet what follows the lonely stretches. I kept my hands white-knuckled on the wheel until I was home. Later, when I told friends what happened, some laughed it off. Some, those who lived around that highway, only nodded and stayed quiet. The trooper's face in my head made my spine chill. The worried furrow, the way his voice had gone small when he described the girl in the burgundy dress. I still don't know if it was a hitchhiker's ghost or something else that takes the form of someone who didn't make it home. All I know is I drove at night, and that night it drove with me. It was the night before Halloween, the 30th, and the sky was pitch black. No moon, only the sound of crickets and the occasional gust of wind sweeping through the trees. Sarah had just gotten off a long shift at the diner and was hurrying home. The quickest way back meant taking a narrow country road, thick woods pressing in on both sides. Locals whispered about that stretch of road. strange things, ghost stories, things Sarah usually laughed off. But walking alone that night, she found herself clutching her jacket tighter, glancing nervously into the shadows as her boots crunched on the gravel. Then it happened. A sharp, shrill laugh rang out, right next to her ear. Sarah froze, her blood running cold. She spun around, but the road was empty. Heart pounding, she looked up just as something swung down from the massive oak that loomed over the road. Long black hair, a pale, ghastly face, almost glowing in the dark. It dangled in front of her, inches from her own face. Sarah wanted to scream, to run, but her body wouldn't move. Her breath hitched as her wide eyes locked with that horrible expression. Then the world went black. When Sarah woke, she was in her own bed. A lantern burned low on the nightstand. Sitting beside her was her mother, Ellen, who looked pale with worry. "I went looking for you," Ellen whispered, holding her daughter's hand. "You didn't come home, so I grabbed the flashlight and walked the road. I found you unconscious under that oak, just 50 yards from the house." Her mother hesitated, then finally said in a trembling voice, "That tree, when I was young, a girl about my age back then, hung herself from that very branch. Her boyfriend had left her, and she never made it home. People found her body swaying there in the morning. Ever since, folks say she still lingers, sitting on the branch at night or dropping down to scare whoever dares to pass. I've seen her once myself. I never told you because I didn't want to scare you. I just kept telling you, don't stay out late." Sarah's hands shook as she listened, every hair on her body standing on end. From that day forward, she always made sure to leave work before dark. And though she never saw the pale woman again, she could never walk past that tree without her heart racing and her eyes darting upward. Back when I was in ninth grade, our house didn't have internet, so I'd hang out at a gaming cafe in town. I usually stayed way too late, sometimes until 1 or 2 in the morning. That night was no different. I biked home down the empty streets, the whole neighborhood quiet except for the hum of a few porch lights. When I finally got home, the front door was locked, and of course, I didn't have a key. So I wheeled my bike around to the side of the house and tapped on the window to call for my mom. Our house sat in a narrow cul-de-sac, surrounded mostly by relatives. Just behind us was my aunt's house. She always left a round bulb burning over her back door. As I waited, I happened to glance that way and froze. On the window of our neighbor's house, a silhouette stared back at me. It was only half a body, but the shape was clear. A man. His head was shaved, smooth, like a glare off polished stone. We just looked at each other. 15 meters of night air between us, nothing but silence. I remember thinking maybe it was a neighbor suspicious of me, mistaking me for a prowler. For a split second, I even thought about walking closer to explain. But something inside me said, don't. We stayed like that for 3, maybe 4 minutes. Then I heard the door unlock. My mom stepped out with her robe pulled tight, squinting into the dark. I pushed my bike inside and said nothing. It wasn't until the next day that the terror hit me. I kept replaying what I saw. The neighbor's house was dark, no lights on. The bulb was behind me, between me and that window, which meant the figure couldn't have been a shadow cast from inside. And if it had been someone standing at the glass, I should have seen their body, not a flat silhouette pressed against the window pane. That realization made my stomach sink. I hadn't seen a person. I'd seen something else. I told my mom later, but not many others. Years passed, and I half convinced myself it was just my imagination. Until recently. My aunt was asleep one night when she jolted awake with the heavy feeling that she was being watched. She turned toward the side door and saw him, a man with a buzz cut, standing half hidden by the wall, staring straight into her room. She swore she could see his face clearly. Handsome, even ordinary looking, not the grotesque specter people usually describe. Thinking it was a burglar, she leapt out of bed and rushed outside. But the cul-de-sac was silent. No footsteps, no one running. There was no way out except through her yard or over the neighbor's fence. Both were undisturbed. She knew then it was the same presence that had haunted the side of the house for years, the same one I'd locked eyes with as a teenager. And maybe, she thought, it only lingered outside because inside her home hung a small wooden crucifix in a framed picture of Christ. a barrier it could never cross. But that left one question neither of us could shake. Why was it still there after all this time? My grandparents had 9 children, but 2 of them, daughters, died young from illness back when medicine wasn't what it is today. That left 7. Grandma passed away over 5 years ago. One by one, everyone in the family moved out, married, or built houses of their own. The old family home was left to Aunt Mary, the third born, who never married and lived alone. 6 months ago, Grandpa passed too. Since then, Aunt Mary had been the only one left in the creaky, century-old farmhouse. The rest of the family talked about fixing the place up, making it a proper home for gatherings and memorials. But the land was caught up in a zoning project, so no one was allowed to renovate. Because she was living alone and already older, the family decided I should move in with her, just in case she got sick during the night and needed help. I'd only been staying there for a couple of weeks when the trouble began. I swear, every night I slept in that house, something disturbed me. I usually worked on my laptop until midnight or 1, but between 2 and 3 in the morning, without fail, I'd be jolted awake. At first, I thought it was just bad dreams, but it wasn't. Sometimes I felt something pressing me down, pinning my arms and chest like a weight I couldn't shake. Other nights, something tugged at my legs, yanking the blanket off or dragging my feet toward the edge of the bed. A few times, the covers wrapped so tightly around me, it was like I was being squeezed. And once, I swear I heard whispering right by my ear. Every time I was fully aware, eyes open, heart pounding, but I couldn't move. My body just wouldn't respond. And when I finally snapped out of it, gasping for air, there was never anyone there. Just the silence of that old farmhouse and me drenched in cold sweat. At first I thought it was stress, maybe sleep paralysis. But after a week of it happening every single night, I knew it wasn't normal. Then work called me in for 3 straight overnight shifts. I slept at the office, on the cot in the break room. Slept like a baby. Not a single incident. The very night I returned to the farmhouse, though, it happened again. Something grabbed my leg so hard it woke me instantly. That morning, shaken, I called my dad and told him what had been happening. He was quiet for a long moment, then finally said, "When your mother stayed at the house during the funeral, she felt it too. It's not just you. Tell your aunt I'd been holding off, not wanting to scare Aunt Mary. But I told her that night. She just gave me a small smile, then pulled out a kitchen knife from under her pillow. 'It bothers you because you're afraid,' she said calmly. 'It won't dare touch me. It knows better. I'll cut it down.' Her words made my stomach turn, because I remembered something. Back when Grandpa was still alive, he always kept a hunting knife under his pillow at night too. The thought of sleeping with a blade inches from my throat terrified me. I couldn't bring myself to do it. My parents promised they'd come this weekend to hold a prayer and blessing ceremony in the house. I just hope whatever haunts that place leaves me alone long enough to keep watch over Aunt Mary. It was about 5 years ago, back when I was a freshman living in the brand new dorms at college. Behind our building, the grounds were still half finished, patches of wild grass, weeds, and half-built fencing that left a gap where you could slip through. There were 5 of us sharing that dorm room, but 3 in particular, me, Jason, and Matt, were always sneaking out late to play video games. We had this spot across campus, a little internet cafe run by an older woman who let us run up a tab. It was cheap and she never closed before sunrise. Usually we'd stay until daylight, but that one night Matt was too tired and wanted to leave early. It was around 2 in the morning when we stepped out. The campus was dead quiet, the only light coming from a few flickering lamps near the quad. We knew the front gate of the dorm would be locked by now, so we decided to cut in from the back where the fence wasn't finished. To get there, you had to walk down this narrow side street. Completely dark, no lamps at all, just the sound of distant dogs barking and our sneakers scraping the pavement. By the time we got close to the gap in the fence, my nerves were shot. There was a huge old oak right next to it. I'd seen it in the daytime, its branches stretching wide, but at night it loomed like a black shadow, bigger and heavier than it should have been. We stuck close together, walking faster, when suddenly I looked up. In the branches, maybe 15 feet above us, I saw them, 2 glowing red eyes. I grabbed Jason and Matt's arms and whispered, "Do you see that?" They both looked. They saw it too. The eyes blinked, vanishing, then flaring up again, just like someone closing and opening their lids. We froze in place. Nobody spoke. The wind picked up hard, rustling the branches, and then, out of nowhere, a laugh echoed through the dark. High-pitched, drawn out, a shrill, "Hey, hey, hey," that seemed to come from everywhere at once. That broke us. We bolted, shoving through the gap in the fence and crashing through the weeds until we made it to the dorm. By the time we burst into our room, sweating and panting, our jeans covered in burrs, I looked around and realized there were only two of us. "Where's Matt?" Jason gasped. Panicked, I dialed his phone. He picked up, breathless. I freaked out. I ran back to the cafe. I couldn't go that way. Even now, none of us can explain what we saw. The red eyes, the shrill laughter that seemed to rattle our bones. Sometimes when we talk about it, Jason jokes, "Well, at least that night cured us of staying out late for games." But whenever I think about those eyes blinking down from the oak, my chest still tightens, and I can't help but wonder, what the hell was watching us?